Welcome, fans, to another edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and we are very pleased to welcome today a man who is a former WWE superstar, TNA superstar, and many, many other points in between. You know him well. He is Mr. Anderson. Before we get to Ken, I'd like to, of course, throw it over to Mr. Cheap Heat, Maurice.
Thanks very much, Jack, and really excited to have Ken on the show today. So thanks a million, Ken, and we're going to kick it over to Jack now to start this off.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to start off by asking what, some consider to be an esoteric question, but I always find it interesting to delve into your background by way of your experience training in the business. And I know you run a successful school academy yourself. And if any of those fundamental values that you learned during your training experience were superimposed on your own operation.
On the very first day, my trainers said to me something that stuck with me, and it was be kind to everybody in the business because and be careful who you step on because be careful who you step on your way to the top because you're going to bump into them again on the way back down. And I feel very strongly that this needs to be a very unselfish business, and it really is in many ways. Most of the people that you come into contact with, no matter what their character is like on screen, their behind the scenes personality is almost never, a reflection of their actual self. So that was really, really important to me. It always has been. Just help people out when you can. If you've got an opportunity to help somebody out, I think you should do it.
Yeah. Ken, I'll ask you straight off the bat. Sorry. A lot of internet rumors this week with it being the Royal Rumble, and a lot of people are kind of hoping that you would come back. Now, obviously, I'm not asking you the question straight out, but like, if the opportunity came to be involved with something like that, would that interest you again?
Yeah, definitely. I would consider it. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. With that being said, I am really excited to see. It's my favorite match of the year. It always has been. And one of the things that when I was with the company, for I believe 5 Rumbles, 4 or 5. I was in one of them, and I would always stay away from finding out what was happening. Like I would just stay as far away from it in the development process, the planning stages, just so that I could be excited and view it from a fan standpoint.
When you started on what is now known as the main roster in 2005, I know you'd done some TV work for them in the past, the WWE. But when you started, I think all the fans, myself included, remember you were presented off the tip of the bat as a player. Were you aware that you were really figured into the development towards the main event mix at that time?
Yeah, I knew right away. It was just it was an all around good vibe that I got there when after my first night coming backstage and seeing not only all the superstars but all the cameramen and all the people that work behind the scenes doing my gimmick. It's like when something like that occurs, you got something. And I just, I've always, I believe that, again, treat people well. And I got along with people behind the scenes. And yes, I did know. I mean, I remember Tommy Dreamer directly telling me, like, you are the flavor of the month. And he did it in such a way that, hey, remember that happens quite a bit, just so that, you don't get a big head. No, but I know I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time with the right mix of skills at that particular time.
I was watching Bill DeMott's podcast a couple of weeks back, and I seen in the news that he said that LA Knight, a guy that you've probably seen on TV, that you were the original LA Knight. Can you see any similarities between you and him?
I mean, I guess. I actually got a chance to work with LA Knight when I was working for NWA. We had a good little program. I mean, I don't know. To me, that's a compliment because I think he's great. And I remember when I was working with him at NWA, I thought this guy, there's nobody better than him on the mic right now in the business. He was just so good at whether it was scripted or just off the cuff. So, I mean, I've heard people say that. I've heard people say that it, The Rock and Austin. And I guess like there's nothing new in the business today. Every move is sort of a recycled. So it's just taking something and making it yours. And I think he does a good job of that.
When, again, harkening back to when you debuted, one of the major features of your presentation that caught everybody's eye and spawned all the imitations right off the bat, being the sincerest form of flattery, was the self ring announcer deal. How can you walk us through how that came about? Because it certainly is unforgettable once you see it.
Yeah. Again, it was like a blend of a bunch of different things that all converged at once. When I was in high school, I did basketball announcing, and I would always do when I was announcing the students from our team, I would always hit the last name twice, and then when I would be introducing the players from the other team, I would just throw it away, like kind of Bill Jones, and then I do a big introduction for our teammates. And there was, I believe it was my maybe third or fourth week that Paul Heyman was writing and producing for OVW television. And he just told me like, hey, go out there tonight. Dean Hill was the ring announcer. He's like, cut him off, cuss him out, dress him down, and then do your own ring introduction and do it big and, make a big production out of it. So I just went out there and I did what I did. And in the moment, it wasn't even something that I planned, but in the moment, I just, I should hit my last name twice. And I did. And when I came back through the curtain, it was like everybody came up to me that night and was like, yes, that's it. Keep doing that. And then I believe 5 weeks later, I was on TV. I was making my debut for the main roster, So it's like, I worked for 6 years roughly, and it took me saying my last name twice to. So to people that are out there trying to make it, I say just keep trying different stuff. I used to always, Tavari and I, we were so hungry and trying to break in to the company, and we would always ask, first it was Kevin Kelly, and then it was Dr. Tom, and then it was Tommy Dreamer. Like, what do we need to do? What are you guys looking for? And I remember Dr. Tom at one point said, we don't know. I don't know what it is I'm looking for, but I know when I see it. And I think that's just really good advice.
It's no secret that Vince McMahon was a huge fan of your character. Did he ever give you any advice in your character and certain things to say, certain things to do?
Yeah. Right out of the gates, he was very, I would go and talk to him in his office for a bit. And I remember asking him, like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to say in this promo? And it was always unscripted for that first month or so. It was completely unscripted. He'd say, don't worry, just go out there and get yourself over. So don't worry about being a good guy. Don't worry about being a bad guy. Go out there and let us know who you are and get yourself over. And then at some point, he told me, like, you've got to stop being so funny. Because I just kept like pushing it a little bit. And then one week I did you guys ever seen Full Metal Jacket? There's a scene with Private Pile where they find a jelly donut in his footlocker. and they make a big production. So I did something similar with Tony Chimmel. And it was at that point Vince said, enough, like no more funny stuff. Stop being so funny. And then for the longest time, it was hard for me to wrap my head around what he was trying to tell me. He was just like, I don't believe you. Like, that's not how you talk to people. And it, like, I always felt like it was when I was pissed off at somebody, I get very animated, and you know, my wife will say like, "Oh, here we go. You gonna cut a promo on me?" You know, like, so it was just like, it was really hard for me to, now you're telling me that all the things that got me to the dance in the first place, you want me to stop doing that? That doesn't make sense. And I resisted for so long. And, but I do agree with him to some degree. Like he would always say like funny doesn't equal money. And I reminded him, I was like, well, what about The Rock? Because The Rock was pretty goddamn funny. You know, and he just, one of the things he said was, yes, he was, but there was a point where he had to do that every single time he came out. And if he didn't hit, it was like a loss. And I kind of recall, you know, like he would come out and he cut the Billy Gunn promo, which is my favorite promo of all time, when he was speaking as God. And if he didn't come out there and give that sort of delivery every time, it was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then at one point, I remember I was so frustrated, and Jericho pulled me aside and he was like, he cares, or he wouldn't say anything at all. And that was awesome advice at that time too.
Speaking of, you know, we just touched on the Rumble, but another fan favorite gimmick match is the Money in the Bank. And when I found out we'd be doing this interview, I wanted to ask you about the ladder match in WrestleMania 23 in Ford Field in Detroit that I actually was there live to see, and a lot of experts regard as, you know, one of the greatest ladder matches in the history of the genre, and I think that's saying something. When you look at the folks involved in that, including yourself, and the outcome and your promo afterwards. Would you say that would be one of the highlights of your, and I know you had a long time in the WWE, but memories of working that match?
Yeah, that was definitely standing atop that ladder on that stage, holding the briefcase up, is one of the highlights of my career. I would say that, and there's a couple other like defining moments, I think, that really means something to me. I have a couple of great memories from that match. One with Hornswoggle, and then a little exchange that Punk and I had at the top of the ladder, because we were actually on, I think it was his first show, and it was my second show in the business. And it was in this crappy little town in central Wisconsin in front of about 100 fans. And so we were up atop that ladder punching each other, and he was like, "Hey, funny seeing you here. This doesn't look like Whitewater, Wisconsin, does it?" Or something like that. And then, so that was a cool experience. And the thing is when I came out, because there's 83,000 people there, and I remember coming out on the stage and looking, and it just looked like a full 20,000 seat arena. It didn't really look any different. It didn't feel any different. And then I got done, I showered up, and I went up into the luxury booths where the family members were, friends and family were allowed to be up there. And that's when I looked down and I saw that this little tiny ring in this giant sea of people. And I was like, I can't believe I just did that.
Awesome.
Zilla Fatu, Umaga's son, and you had Umaga's last match, has recently come out and said that he'd like to wrestle with you. Would that be something that you'd be interested in as well?
Yes, actually, I think I can announce that now, that it's going to happen in my hometown, actually, November 1st, I think. So we scheduled it all the way out. November 1st. It's going to be for Raging Pro Wrestling in Rockwood, Wisconsin, which is in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which is actually like a sister city to my original hometown. But yeah, that means a lot to me. He reached out to me 6 or 7 months ago and just said, "Hey, I'm in the business now, and if you'd like to do something." So I put it out there to a couple of different promoters that I knew, and the guy from Raging Pro was all for it. So I'm really excited to do that.
Yeah, it's a nice thing for him as well.
That means a lot to me. I mean, people ask me all the time about having Eddie's last match and having Umaga's last match, and it's like, I don't know what to say other than I'm honored that I was the guy that did that. I had a tremendous time with him in the ring, and I remember that last match with Umaga. We were in Australia, and he was just like, we both had a chip on our shoulder at that point, and he was like, "Let's go out there and tear it down." And we had worked each other a lot before, and like that match was different.
When you were in WWE around the initial period and into, of course, years down the road, you did a lot of work with the Undertaker, which was a signal to the fans, like, this guy's a player.
Mm-hmm.
What did you when you were working with him approach that, given the fact that he was a legend then, legend now, et cetera, et cetera? Did you approach that in a more rigorous way, or how did you put your matches together with him?
Hey, what would you like to do tonight, sir? One of my favorite stories, we were in Manila at Araneta Coliseum where the Thrilla in Manila went down. And we had 2 nights there. And first night we were working each other in the main event. And I just walked up to him and I said, what would you like to do tonight, sir? And he goes, work my leg, and at some point I'll drop you on your head. And we went out and just called it on the fly, and we did like 25 minutes, and just that was the way we worked a lot. Even the pay-per-view matches, I would say 60 to 70% of those matches was all just called on the fly. He's that good. And the first night we worked each other was in Oklahoma City. And it was just like, I asked him that same question, and he said, we're not going to talk about anything. I'll see you in the ring. Just listen to me. And I wasn't nervous, even a little bit. Because I knew that all I had, I was nervous in the sense that, like, I want to do a good job. I'm always wanting to do a good job. But I knew that all I had to do was listen to him and do my stuff well, and I'd be good. And I knew that he wasn't going to steer me in the wrong direction, and he wouldn't have us go out there and put us in that position to have a stinker, So it was literally paint by numbers. He would say, "Punch me," and I'd give him a punch. He'd say, "Kick me," and I'd give him a kick. And then we came back through the curtain, and he was like, "I like that. That was good. Tomorrow night." And then the next night he allowed me to call a spot or two. And then the next night he let me do a little more. And so it was a really cool learning experience. And he didn't just give me, I had to earn his respect.
Yeah. Another legend that you worked with as well was Shawn Michaels. Was he similar to Undertaker in that way to work with? Yeah,
just an absolute dream to work with. The thing about those guys is you realize when you're working with people like that how effortless, the more relaxed and calm you are, the better this looks, the smoother it looks. So that's something that I try to instill in my students, is just relax, have fun, be calm. And you watch, he's not tensed up all the time. His muscles aren't, you know what I mean? Like, he was just an absolute dream to work with.
Another one of those opponents that with signatory of your run was Batista. You wrestled a ton of times. What now he's gone on to, he's a darn good actor and getting success in Hollywood. Did you have was he another one of these individuals that you had an easy time with in the ring, because your matches look pretty snug?
No, we were again, he was so kind and giving to me. It was, relatively, he kind of gave me my first big break within the company. And it was Great American Bash 2007. I was just kind of like, because I had gotten this huge push right out of the gates, and then I got injured. And when I came back, it was like, I was just kind of teetering. They didn't really know what to do with me, kind of thing. And one day Vince came up and said, "Hey, you're wrestling Batista at the Great American Bash. We've got 2 weeks to put it together. So are you ready?" And I said, "Of course I am." And I just sort of thought, it was one of those moments where I was like, this could go, okay, am I going to get squashed by him? Because if I get squashed by him, I'll sort of know where my fate lies. And on the day, it was Arn Anderson was our producer, and Arn said, "No, it's going to be a back and forth match, 50-50 kind of thing." He picks it, and actually they're going to put you over because I think Batista got disqualified. And I remember thinking, just because of the storyline, the little story that there was behind it, Batista's coming back from injury. He's supposed to be pissed off. He wants to take it out on Mark Henry, but Mark Henry's hurt, so he's going to take it out on me. And I remember asking, like, can I get color? Can I bleed a little bit? And they came back and said, you can't bleed because Taker is working. He was working the Great Khali in a Punjabi prison match. They're gonna get some color, so you can't do it. And within a minute of us being in the ring, I got busted open hard way. And then so I had a good mask going the entire match, which I think helped add to the story, but it was unintentional. And then he posted me at the end, and I smacked my head open again, even harder. And that turned out to be like one of the you come back from a moment like that, and people respect you a little more, because I don't know, I kept going, and I didn't give up. Although I don't think anybody in my position would have given up. I think everybody would have kept going.
And no heat for the unintentional hard way.
No, I remember I came back, and Vince stood up and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good." He was, "All right." And I went and got stitched up on the spot. Got some stitches right here. I still have a big scar right here on my head, and I got another one right here. So, war wounds. And at the time, it's probably the worst concussion I've ever had in my life, right? We just didn't know any better. So I worked the next night and the next night. So I think I took the next night off because that was on a Sunday. It was pay-per-view. And I think we had Monday off. And then Tuesday I worked Batista again on SmackDown, because we were taping SmackDown on Tuesdays. But just, stitch me up, go out there. And that's just kind of the way it was.
You mentioned there that they had kind of 2 weeks to put this program together. People, I don't know what it is like these days there, but people used to always say about WWE that things could change at the drop of a hat at any time. Were you ever in a situation in live TV where a script would be ripped up and it'd go in a different angle, or anything you can think of like that?
Yeah. Matt Hardy and I, so we were on SmackDown one night. Segment 1 was King Booker, and it was like Regal and Finley and Sharmell and all these people in the ring doing like how they always start the show off with a talking segment, right? So it was that. And then segment 2 was me versus a local guy in kind of a squash match. And segment 3 was Matt Hardy versus Psychosis. And segment 1 was in the ring, and I was going over my match one last time with my opponent. And Hardy came around the corner and said, "We got a 3-segment match and we're up next." And Johnny Ace came around the corner and said, "All right, guys, got to come up with the finish." And the finish had to be, we had to include Shane Helms, who was going to be also on commentary. So that was on the fly. So we came up with a finish, and then it was a 3-segment match. So we wrestle, commercial break, wrestle, commercial break, wrestle. So we had to come up with, break spots to go into those commercial breaks. And we had about 3 or 4 minutes to put that together. And then we just went out and, again, called it on the fly. And the thing is like situations like that happen fairly regularly, but working on the fly was kind of a common thing. So, and especially I was working with Matt Hardy, and we had been matched up on house shows repeatedly. And I think we'd had, some other SmackDown matches and stuff. So we sort of had some stuff in the tank, and we just went out there and, that was stuff like that was really fun, rewarding.
Speaking of things changing, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that whole storyline where Vince had the Sun deal, and their urban legend has it, or maybe it's fact, that you were supposed to be revealed as his son, etc. How did that play out from your perspective?
I got in trouble. And yeah, I mean, like, that had been months in the build. And like, when I say this, I'm super happy for my buddy Hornswoggle. Like, it's not sour grapes in any way. But yeah, it was. And I remember the next TV taping they were going to reveal in Green Bay. And I remember I landed in Minneapolis, got home, and as soon as I walked in the door, I got a text message or a call from Johnny Ace's secretary, or Vince's secretary, saying, "Hey, Vince needs to see you in Stamford. So go back to the airport. We'll book you a flight." And so I went back, and I remember thinking, like, here we go, baby. And I thought it was good, because here we are about to announce that I'm his son, and I just thought, like, well, this must be big. So I fly all the way there, and I get into Stamford, and they come and pick me up with the town car, and I get to Titan Towers, and there's like 9 other people there, and everybody was like, "I don't think this is good." But nobody knew what it was. And I remember, it was the Signature Pharmacies thing. And Edge was the first one to go in. And we were like, whoever goes in first, come out and smarten everybody up. And I remember Edge came out, and he had his head down, and he said, "It's not good. I can't say anything." And, he marched out. I think I was 3rd or 4th to go in there. And he was just like, "Look, our hands are tied." So he suspended me for 30 days and fined me 10 G's.
Was there ever any thought to putting that on hold and perhaps doing it again, or did they just switch right away?
No, they just switched it right away. That's the thing about WWE and their booking. Injuries occur all the time. Things they're always pivoting. They're so good at got to pivot. Well, this doesn't work, and it's nothing personal. It's never anything personal, although it at times when things stack up, you can start to feel like it is personal, but it almost never is personal. It's just we got to keep the machine going. I remember one time Raphael Morphy worked with WWE, and he came over to TNA at some point, and I asked him about something, if I had some sort of heat or something like that, about something. He was like, honestly, he goes, "Don't take this the wrong way, but like, your name doesn't come up," or it never came up. And it wasn't because it was just like, we have so much stuff. There's so much stuff going on that they're not even thinking about you. So that's also good advice. I think you have to work to keep yourself relevant and in the public eye. They're not going to do it for you.
I think the legitimacy, though, of you being revealed as the son would be a lot more memorable, because whilst I don't mean any disrespect to Hornswoggle, I think they kind of played it on the funny angle where they were going to go with a kind of serious angle with you, if that makes sense.
Who knows? I don't even try to like. It is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, okay, and I've always tried to be that way in the business. I don't get excited about too many things, like really, really excited until they occur, because things change. I remember when they told me, so we had 5 days to put together Money in the Bank, the WrestleMania 23 Money in the Bank match. 5 days we met, and we had like maybe an hour or two to sort of like put things together. And for the first 3 days, I believe Edge was going over in that match. And then it was like, you know, second to last day, hey, we're going to put Kennedy over in this thing. And I tried, you know, again, I tried not getting excited. I didn't tell anybody about it. I just like, we'll see if this happens. And then it did. But then fast forward to, I have the briefcase, and now they're going to put the title. Undertaker tore his biceps, needed to have surgery. Vince called me in the office and said, hey, we wanted Taker to be the champ for a really long time, but he's injured. He needs to have surgery. So we're going to have you come out next week, cash in your briefcase, and you're going to be the new champ. And I went home, and then the very next show I was on, I took a bump, felt something pop in my triceps, rolled out to the outside. My arm swelled up. I went to the emergency room that night, got an MRI. They told me that my triceps was torn off the bone, that I was going to have surgery. And you know, hey, we still need to get that title off of Taker. So you're going to drop that briefcase to Edge, and he's going to do what you were supposed to do. And I just like, I remember too at the time, I'm not going to argue about it. It's just business, and we'll get it back at some point. That's always been my mentality.
Another memorable angle in that, event in your run was facing Ric Flair on the retirement, the win or retire deal. You know, great match, great story. Just wanted to know how that came together for you, and your thoughts on his. Well, he's talking about making a comeback again after the last match about 2 years ago.
I mean, I'd never believed that Ric Flair is completely done in the business. You know, I will say this. At the time, I had started to develop this chip on my shoulder that would take a decade to remove. And I remember now looking back on it, just like, tell me, okay, I'm working Flair at the pay-per-view. Okay, cool. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. You know, and it was like I was punching the clock at that point. I had a really bad attitude. So I regret that, but it is what it is, you know.
Any memories of working or interacting with Triple H?
I never really got a chance to work with him much. I know, you know, I don't even remember doing this, honestly. Like most of the stuff that I did there, you're doing a different city every night, and it's just constant, 52 weeks a year. So you just commit stuff to memory and then you dump it. But somebody reminded me recently that Triple H and I tagged against 30, like the whole ECW roster or something like that. But yeah, relatively positive experiences, but I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with him. For the most part, when I was on SmackDown, he was on Raw, and you know, we just never. And then also when I was on Raw, he was doing the DX thing. They had resurrected DX, and I think they were, you know, memory serves me correctly, they were doing the Spirit Squad thing for a while. But I will say this. With what he's done with the company over the last few years is incredible. I think and I really think the people that I still talk to that still work there say that he's an incredible boss to work for.
So you are gone, decide to leave whatever WWE, and then you sign with TNA in 2010 and start another great chapter in your career. I know you worked for them on television a long time before that, but how did you ink that deal? How did that deal come together?
That was a combination of, I remember Booker T was the first person to reach out to me and was like, "Hey man, the water is fine over here." Like he had just gone over there and he's like, "I just want to reach out and just say, man, if you get an opportunity, you should come over here." And it's still, I just wasn't ready at the time. And I might have, it might have been still while I was on my 90-day no compete clause. When he reached out to me. And then, several months go by and I went on the Hogan tour of Australia. Yeah. And I got to work with Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan and got to know them a little. And then when they went into TNA, they really went to bat for me and, helped bring me in. But my first contract with them wasn't anything special. I had to go in there and sort of prove myself and earn it again.
Just a sidebar, since you brought up Hogan and Bischoff, the reviews of their tenure are tepid in some circles, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that at one point we were talking about resurrecting the Monday Night Wars and going against WWE on the same night. Do you think in hindsight that could have had legs had it gone on longer, or was it a mistake?
I think it was very ambitious, and I think it was done with the best intentions. But WWE is a monster as far as when you see the way that it operates behind the scenes. It is just well-oiled. It's a well-oiled machine, and I don't believe that TNA at the time was like that. There was a lot of like hands that, the left hand didn't talk to the right hand. And so I think that was, they're not to badmouth, but this just is what it is. There was a time where we went into Baltimore. We had a show at a ball stadium, like an outdoor, like a baseball stadium, that held six or 7,000 people, say. And we drew 162 people that night. And ROH was down the road at a 900 seat venue and sold it out. It's just stuff like that. We would go into towns and, we go to the gym and people would come up and go, what are you guys doing here? I'm like, "Oh, we're wrestling tonight right down the road." Oh, I had no idea. It was that kind of stuff. So it was unfortunate. I think it was very expensive too. Like to take something on the road, to go from, we were at Universal Studios for so long to where like the ring just sat there. All of the equipment sat there until the next TV taping. It didn't have to be disassembled at all, to then taken on the road. I heard that it costs about $600,000 when you're looking at the building rental, all the travel and the airfare and stuff for all the talent. You got to have venue insurance. You have to have somebody on staff, an ambulance on staff, and security, and the TV truck itself, and to access the satellites and stuff like that. It's a huge expense.
A couple of the fans were asking here in Ireland, could we expect to see you back at OTT Wrestling anytime in the future?
Man, I had such a blast working that show. It was just that's one of my favorite experiences that I've had on the indie wrestling scene. Just those fans were asshole to elbow, nuts to butts, and just rabid. It was really exciting.
It's absolutely thriving the scene over here again. They just sold out like 550 people last week.
I have a student who is of Irish descent, and he was just telling me last night that his wife is going to let him. They're going to go over there for vacation, and she agreed that if he could get the work, that he could do some indie dates over there. So I'm trying to get him connected with a few indie promoters over there, give him that experience. That's the most rewarding thing about owning this school too, is like being able to help my students out experience those things. I remember what that was like. I remember what it was like to, go to Canada. That was my first international tour that I did. Like, I was just like, I'm doing it, I'm traveling. This is world traveling.
One of the major angles you're involved in, and I've got a lot of fan questions about this still, is the whole aces and eights thing. They seem to look back. I mean, initially it garnered some criticism, but what have you, now it seems to be somewhat of a favorite amongst the fans. How was that pitched to you? And that kind of gave you, correct me if I'm wrong, an opportunity to show some of your character chops there, because we saw some of your character that wasn't seen before in terms of that internal conflict, and not just the straight NWO gang type thing.
Yeah, it was something that I was just sort of in limbo at the time, I remember, and they didn't really know what exactly to do with me or who to pair me up with. And Bischoff pitched it to me like, what about this? And I thought, let's try it, and so I was happy that he pitched it to me in the first place. And then it was a lot of fun, and there was so much. We did a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and a lot of things creatively that I just had a really fun time doing it. And what a great group of guys it was to work with, all of them. Mm-hmm. But that was Bischoff's. That was Eric Bischoff's prodding.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Eric and the way that he works in his mind for the business? Did you learn a lot from Eric?
I absolutely love Eric Bischoff. Like, I have nothing but I consider him a friend. And yeah, I think that the thing about him is, in his teaching style, he points out his own flaws and things like that, missteps that he's had along the way.
Did you ever consider you work for the NWA and you've done pretty consistent work independently. Have you ever considered, or did it ever come up about the AEW startup when around the time that it occurred, or any time since, considering you worked against Sting in TNA, he's still there winding his career down? That ever be an option for you?
Yeah, I think for several years, for like the last few years, I was just sort of resigned with, COVID happened, and I think I took one booking that year. And I was just sort of like happy training people, but I think my desire and my passion has been, reignited to some degree. So that's definitely something that I would consider.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it was COVID that kind of zapped the wrestling bug out of you a little bit. You probably had to close the school for a while as well, then, did you? And that kind of probably put you in a place that way.
Yeah, we shut our doors for 2 years. I took it seriously, and I didn't want to be a place that was like a hotbed for, like, an outbreak of COVID. So we just and you can't social distance when you're body slamming each other. So it's just like, I decided to shut the doors, and then we would get close to reopening, and then the new variation would come up, a new variant.
And what point did the reignition happen for you then, that you were kind of getting back on the road?
Like back on the road, I don't know, just in the last like year or so, just, getting back in the gym regularly, feeling better. I've gone through some personal struggles over the past several years, and just getting right with my own internal struggles, I guess.
As a wrestler's had, you've had some injuries that we've discussed here today, but when you look at not all of wrestling as a whole, but if you look at some of the spots that occur, I'm going to say AEW because it jumps out most, but some of the extreme high risks that are being taken without being grounded in, say, a storyline or making it meaningful. What would you say to your students in your school when they see that and that becomes a normative standard, given how easily you can hurt yourself in a ring?
I mean, I get why people do it, and when it is executed flawlessly, it's incredible and it makes for great highlight reels and stuff. But you can get injured just taking a flat back bump. Like I thought I tore my triceps just taking a back bump. So I try to tell them, just you have to take calculated risks, and if you do that all the time, you're gonna hurt yourself. I remember when I first started out, I was, my name was Kamikaze Ken Anderson because I did all that high risk stuff. And I remember I dove onto somebody from the top rope. I climbed up to the top and I dove onto them, and they sidestepped me, and I lawn jarted myself and scorpioned into the ground, and hurt myself. I was hurt for several months. And I remember for whatever reason, I sent that tape to WWE. I sent it to Kevin Kelly, and Kevin called me up one day. He was like, "Do you want some advice?" And he goes, "Stop doing that. Like, stop doing that shit. You don't need to do that stuff to get over. Tell me a story." And I pretty much stopped doing stuff like that at that point. And I still got injured.
Iron.
What goes down for you, Ken, as the proudest moment of your career when you look back on it so far?
Two things: the Money in the Bank. Three things, I would say. Three things: the Money in the Bank briefcase, going over to Iraq with a tribute to the troops in 2007, and my match with Kurt Angle at Lockdown in 2009.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that I had to just circle back to for a second. How was that experience in TNA? Because you guys had an extensive number of matches there, and they were all pretty much barn burners. Was he your favorite opponent per se?
He's up there. People ask me all the time who my favorite opponent is. I really can't answer that because I've been fortunate to work with so many greats. Mm-hmm. But he's definitely on my Mount Rushmore, and that was my favorite match that I've ever been a part of. Mm-hmm. Just from a storytelling perspective, there was, like I've told this story before, but they initially gave us 20-25 minutes or something like that to tell that story. We put it together, and then on the day, he came up to me and said they're cutting our time by like 10 minutes. So they went from like 25 minutes down to 15. And he just kind of pulled me aside and said, "We're going 25. I'll take the heat for it." And when you're talking about like TV or pay-per-view, well, 30 seconds, if you go over 30 seconds on your time, you're in trouble. And when he said like, "We're going to go 10 over at least," I'm going to listen to Kurt, So I remember being in the ring, and at some point Slick was our ref, and Slick started saying, "Take it home." And we just ignored him and kept going. And Slick's like, "Guys, they're yelling at me. They're screaming in my ear." And Kurt said, "Tell them to fuck off," which he can't do because it wasn't a two-way conversation. But you just see Slick look up at the camera and go like, I don't know what to do. Throw up his hands.
Tremendous.
And then we did come back, and I didn't get an ounce of heat for it, other than I think D'Lo was our producer at that time, and he just came up to me and he was like, he knew. And then the one thing that bummed me out was AJ came up to me. AJ Styles was working Ric Flair that night. So this is like a big thing for AJ in his career. And they shaved like 7 or 8 minutes off of his time for that match because of the fact that we went so long. And he wasn't mad, he was disappointed, which is worse.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Mount Rushmore of wrestlers. Does Chris Benoit for wrestling ability feature on that Mount Rushmore for you?
No. I mean, he was definitely up there as far as wrestling ability, but on that Mount Rushmore for me is Austin, Rock, Sean, and Kurt.
Well, Ken, you've been very generous with your time this afternoon. Appreciate it greatly. Wanted to ask if you could lay out for the fans where they can keep in touch with you and keep on top of all the goings on with your school and anything else that you have for them.
Yeah. Again, I own the Academy School of Professional Wrestling. We're located in St. Paul, Minnesota, part of the Twin Cities. If anybody's interested, if you want to relocate or you live in this area, please. I also do virtual coaching too. You can reach out to me. My number is 507-722-2776. Just send me a text. I will respond to you. I respond to everybody. And like I said, if you're not in the area, maybe we can do something via Zoom or some other means, electronically. I'm on all the social medias, Mr. Ken Anderson on Twitter, Mr. Ken Anderson, Mr. spelled out on the Instagram. I've got a Facebook. We've got Academy pages, the Academy SOPW on Twitter and Instagram. And recently, my wife and I have been going live we train at our school 4 nights a week. Mondays and Wednesdays are beginners, and Tuesdays and Thursdays are advanced. And usually with the advanced nights, we run matches. So we pair up our students, give them like an hour to put it together, or sometimes just work on the fly, depending on the night. But we generally go live at 8:15 Central Standard Time every Tuesday and Thursday for match night. And we sort of peel the curtain back, and they'll wrestle a match, and then everybody comes in and we critique, we go over it, we go around the room, and then go on to the next match. So if anybody wants to, that is we're on Anderson Squared, spelled out Anderson Squared on the TikTok.
Cool. Before we let you go, sir, I got a fan who's asking your prediction on who's going to win the Rumble.
Punk.
Good choice.
Punk.
Maurice,
Gotta be right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who do you think?
Who do I think?
Yeah. For the Rumble. What's your prediction, sir?
You'd be guessing CM Punk anyway.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Jack?
I like Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Opens up some possibilities.
We'll see. The Rock has certainly introduced a major conundrum, right? I think it's possible to do a 3-way, all 3 of them
for Mania.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like WrestleMania 20. That was a good one. Yeah, for sure. The great part about WWE is they have so much talent there now and so many options. It's really a golden time to be a fan again.
Which I feel like you can't. You have to finish that story with Cody, right? Like you started telling it, you have to finish it. So it'll be interesting. I'm definitely excited to see what happens.
Yeah. Cool. And do you have any wrestling promotions or any appearances coming up? Are you around in Philadelphia for WrestleCon or anything like that?
I do have a ton of wrestling appearances. I'm sorry, I don't have any off the top of my head, but I've got, like I said, November 1st for sure is that match with Zilla Fatu. And I know he was going to announce it today, so I'm excited about that. But that's another thing. If you want, if you're interested in booking me, if you're a promoter, you can reach out to me at that same number, that 507 number. And
there he is there.
Yep.
I was going to say, have you been to Canada lately?
I have not. I've not been to Canada recently. I've not been out of the United States in a few years. So
I'm the executive vice president of Great North Wrestling, and we're putting our season together. So we'd love to have you come up to when the weather's more hospitable than it is now, of course. But being from Minnesota, it probably wouldn't be that much of a shock, would it?
No. People always say like you're used to this weather, right? And like you'd never get used to it.
No, absolutely not. It's
how do you people will say like, how do you live in a climate like that? We're inside. You don't go outside.
Yes,
you stay inside all day. And if you do have to go outside, you get bundled up, and you are exposed to the cold as little as possible.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Well, Ken, thanks again for your time today. We will put all the information about your school and keep in touch regarding appearances on this show description, and keep in touch otherwise. But very much appreciate your time today, sir.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Well, for Maurice, I'm Jack Kilby. We're going to sign off for this edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.